Thanks, Jess. The next thing that we're going to ask of you is that you warm up your shouting fingers and go ahead and put in chat for us. Tell us what one thing is that's changed in your practice since you started in this program. So take a moment to think, because we know that there's a lot of new skills that you learn in here, new ways of looking at things, new perspectives, and it can start to infiltrate your practice even in ways you didn't even think that it might. When you have something, go ahead and pop it in chat. So Chris is talking about intentionally eliciting stories of patients and families. Kylie says she's trying out sitting in silence and using respect statements. Kirsten's incorporating asking permission. Franny's slowing down in those uncomfortable moments. That can be hard to do, huh? Chelsea's working with ways to redirect anger or finding emotion behind the emotional response we're hearing. Micah incorporating family perspective. Thank you all. We love seeing these things because it's so much fun for us to get to watch your practice evolve too, as you gain these new skills and new tools. So we're going to dive into a workshop overview so that you know kind of where we're going with all of this for today and for later on in the week. All right, so we are so today, Monday, we're going through some professional identity work and talking about advocacy and power and what that can look like in our workplaces, as well as assumption and biases, how we're showing up, how we identify ourselves, and where that comes into how we're represented in our different roles and in our workplaces. So we're focusing basically, in short, on interprofessionalism and what it means to be an interprofessional team. Friday, we're going to be going through some preparation and some team building exercises. In the afternoon, we're going to work on some pre-meeting work. In the afternoon, we're going to be working on family meetings. And then Saturday is really about family meetings and then adapting your skills and how you show up in different groups to your work. So recognizing who you are, how you're showing up, and then ways to leverage that, and also how to work with other people in their different styles. So we'll start with ourselves and then what we as individuals are bringing, and then we'll spend some time looking at the larger profession self-identities. All right, thanks, Celine. You can move ahead. Sorry about that. So a couple reminders. We really want to create a really engaging 2.5 days. All right, so do whatever you can to be fully present if you are able. We have built-in breaks, so please take them. We expect you to walk away from the computer, walk away from Zoom, take some deep breaths, eat some good food, do those things so that when you come back, you can be fully engaged again. And we know it's hard to be on Zoom for extended periods of time. When you're here, if you can have your cameras on as much as possible, that allows us all to be really fully present in the space together. Have your cell phones, your email turned off if you can. If you can even put on an away message, sometimes that's helpful so people know that you won't be responding back right away. Do you all have your manuals with you? Can you raise your hand if you have your manuals? Okay. Kylie, did you not get a hard copy? Okay. Do you have the electronic version? Okay. Maybe Jess will connect with you a little bit, but it's easiest usually if we have printed notes. This is the one time that we don't advocate killing trees, but it's really helpful to have a hard copy version of the manual because we're going through so many different things here. Also, if you can have a notebook so that you can take notes, that's going to be really useful for this. If you have any questions, Jess can help you out. You can direct message her here on Zoom. You can send her a text. Her cell phone number is in your manual. Helene, anything that you would add to that at this moment?
Let's hope, fingers crossed, that your gets there by Friday. For today, you don't need very much of your manual. There's only one thing, and we can direct you to it. So if you open it as a electronic, you can just have a look at that one page, and we'll tell you how to get there when it's time. So no worries. Okay, that's it.
Thank you. So next we're going to talk really briefly about our community agreements, okay? We call this our space to grow. And really, community agreements is what we commit to all of you as faculty, and for all of us that are here together to commit to each other so that we can have a safe space to learn and grow. We want you to know that, Helene and Jess and I, we're always trying new things in our teaching. We're trying new things in how we present material, how we go about engaging you in that material, and we aren't going to get it right all the time. And sometimes we have hiccups and flubs, or something comes out differently than how we intended for it to. We just ask that you give us grace, but also we welcome your feedback. And so if there's anything that doesn't land quite right, please let us know, and we will do our best, and we want to do better all the time. So just highlighting a few of these community agreements, speak up so that we can learn from you and also leave space for others. We call that moving in and moving out. So we try and make sure that people have sort of balanced airtime so that not one person is dominating. Take risks. This is scary stuff. This is hard stuff. It involves our identities, which is always uncomfortable, but dare to be vulnerable, and it really can pay off. Recognize that we all are coming from different contexts and realities, and mine will be very different from others. And so if we acknowledge that going in, it also helps to assume good intent where some of those contexts are different, right? And so even if things come across to us probably differently than the other person intended, assuming positive intent. If you're stuck on something that maybe feels like it didn't land right, ask for clarification. Try not to assume or project what you think that person meant. Feel free to speak for yourself, use I statements, be aware that we all have biases, and then respect confidentiality. So what we like to say is what learned leaves, and otherwise everything else that is shared stays in this space. Okie dokie, we're gonna play a game here. So I want everybody to hold up 5 fingers. I'm gonna lift some life experiences, and if you have done them, put 1 finger down. Keep it in the camera view if you can, so we can all see you. And once you have all 5 fingers down, like wave at us so that we can see you, okay? If you've eaten ice cream in the last 24 hours, put a finger down. If you have tried to talk during a Zoom meeting without unmuting, you can put a finger down. If you adopted a COVID pet, you can put a finger down. If you quit a social media platform at all anytime recently, you can put a finger down. If you started a social media account for a pet, you can put a finger down. If you have quit a job in a day or less, put a finger down. That would be pretty brisk for all of us, right? If you have knit something that's actually wearable, we would love to know that. If you have watched or read Harry Potter more than twice, you can put a finger down. If you re-gifted a holiday gift this year, you can put a finger down. Oh, I can see Chris is getting closer. If you have taken something out of the dirty laundry pile to wear recently, you can put a finger down. And if you have attended a virtual concert, if you speak sign language, if you have lost an argument with a pet or a toddler, if you secretly watched ahead in a TV show after promising your friend or partner that you would watch it together, you can put a finger down.
I think Kylie won.
Did Kylie win?
Yep.
Yay, good job. Thanks
Won.
for looking out for me, Helene. I really appreciate it. Cool. All right. Yay,
All right.
Kylie.
We might have to update our guilty pleasures. Those were COVID. We got to move on.
I know. I was thinking that too. We've got to come up with some new ones. All right, y'all. So we're going to start out today by doing a quick skills refresher. So we have a handful of skill refreshers that we've spread out in our time together this week, like starting today and then going into later on this week, just to get your mind back in the game with the things that we've already learned in the past and try and keep those good things in the forefront of our minds and practice them. So we're going to name that skill. So if I were to say, so that I know where to begin, can you tell me what you've heard from the rest of your team? This would be an assess understanding skill, right? So we try not to say, tell me what you understand, because that's, that puts a lot of pressure on somebody. But so that I know where to begin, can you tell me what you've heard from the rest of the team? Lean, what's our next one? All right. So if the patient says, I'm just praying for a miracle, that she'll wake up and she'll walk right out of here, and the clinician says, I'm hoping for that too.
You guys
What
want to drop in the
skill
chat?
is this? Yeah, can you put it in the chat? Yeah, I'm seeing some alignings, and I would agree with that. This is an aligning statement. So we try and align with hopes before we're moving on, right? Okay, we're going to jump into our new content for today. Celine, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks. So a lot of what we're going to be talking about, all of what we're going to be talking about is interprofessional teaming. And what we're going to be doing today, and then what others are going to be doing on Thursday, is trying to do kind of a both and with respect to our professional identities. So, we talk a lot about silos in healthcare. We have them structurally, we have them in the roles that we have them by the disciplines that we have. And really, what we're aiming for in palliative care, and what I'm doing some work in palliative care, and kind of what is the secret sauce. And actually, the secret sauce is the interprofessional team. So we are really this bridge that is kind of running across all these silos. And it is in part because we invest in understanding what are the true gifts that each of the teams bring, and that we actually, much like an orchestra, instead of just, the parts that are just having their solo moments and they're going, in sequence, we're really working to bring people together in tandem with a great deal of intention. So what we're really going to be talking about today is who are you, particularly as nurses in a DNP program. So you have multiple professional identities. You have the one you're grounded in, you have the one you're growing into. On Thursday, everyone else will be doing those things. And then the part that we're going to have to simulate for you is there's a big group discussion where people come back afterwards and share across disciplines to sort of get some insights into sort of what are those core things, or those things, or you work with people all day long, but they have secrets, and you have secrets. And we're really trying to open up that little box and make that explicit with each other. And so a lot of this work that we're doing is really intentional. As you come to learn, we're really careful with our words. And we have gone from like a single disciplinary to a multidisciplinary to an interdisciplinary teams has been the way that we've been thinking about this. Disciplines, however, can be within a profession. So if you think about within nursing, you all have different disciplines within nursing. You might have different populations, you might have different foci. So you are actually a multidisciplinary nursing team. But if we are thinking about the space in which we in palliative care are working, it's a multi-professional space. And part of that is that every profession spends a great deal of time investing in creating itself and creating its future participants. And that is what we're trying to bring to the table, because it's not just your discipline, it's all that your profession stands for, both structurally, intellectually, culturally, and practically. So that's what we're going to be embracing those ideas today. So we're going to have you guys start. There's a set of, and then Kylie, this is one of those places. There's some prompt questions that are on page 9 of your manual. So if you have the hard copy, we actually think it's a nice idea to use your hands to write. There's a different cognitive function that happens in thinking about things when you write with a pen. And I'm not going to say you have to do it that way, but if you do, that's great. And Kylie, you can't. So online is just fine. But really what we're asking you guys to be thinking about is sort of what is your profession's core identity? And in this instance, you can wear that hat however you choose. I'm assuming we're anchoring it in nursing. But if that, if you're further along in NP-ness and that is part of your new identity, go ahead and write about those things. This is sort of the way that you're looking in. We also want you to reflect on those ways in which you've been misunderstood or misrecognized. Nurses get taken for all kinds of things. So, what is it, how is it that you have not been seen or heard or understood as you wanted to be or intended to be? And then lastly, these are sort of the summary, you have more questions there, but what's your profession's best kept secret? So it's kind of like, what's your superpower? So with that, I'm going to let you guys start writing. It is 9:25. You're going to give you about 8 minutes. So 9:33, we'll give you about a 1-minute warning. Would you like some music or would you rather have silence? Thumbs up for music. Otherwise, just go off camera for silence. Okay. If I turn on music and you don't like it, you can turn your speakers off. Go ahead and turn off the cameras and mics if you want to just have the time to yourself. And I am going to try to fill in the blanks as we go. So I'm going to try and
Great.
type in the
Thanks, Leah.
background and just take notes here. And then we can generate a list. And really, if you guys want to drop this in the chat or if you want to just come off mic, we're really just going to be a generative collective vision from the 6 of you of what is your profession.
I wrote down some words like advocates, trustworthy, compassionate as part of my identity as a nurse.
Thanks, Chelsea. Others? And feel free to use chat if that's more comfortable for you.
Annie, how would you go about describing your profession?
I also said advocate, and then I also wrote, I'm not quite sure how to say it, but like intimate patient interactions, patient and family interactions.
What do you mean by intimate?
Like you are with the family and witnessing people at their very worst moments and at their very best moments, and when they're very vulnerable.
I said something pretty similar. I had said we're a pretty constant presence where a lot of areas of medicine are not easily accessible. We are a first right there for all these families. And we're a big support and also are there to celebrate the wins.
Love that, Kristen.
I said advocating, and I also said spending time. We're usually the people that, same with constant presence, but seeing the whole patient and getting to know the little details about them.
Yeah, absolutely, Kylie.
Also said advocate as well. And then I also looped in that kind of just, I feel like that's maybe different is like at least I was taught nursing is both an art and a science. Like I feel like that differs in us in terms of like how we approach the bedside, how we approach our care is a lot different than other aspects, but we still have to have that really core science background, but we have this other aspect that's completely, I feel like sets us apart.
So Micah, what's an example of the art of nursing?
I think it's just like what people have been saying, which is we're spending time with people, we're really getting to know them. We're really just being there, like just listening or just being at the bedside. And I feel like how we approach patients, we're not coming in like gung ho. Sometimes, like when you're thinking in the hospital in their little pods of like their little herds, and all coming in and being like, oh yeah, we're doing this. Okay, cool. We get to go back in and be like, okay, and we're there during those vulnerable times. And that where it might be someone's first time in the hospital, and they may be like really sick, and we need to help them go to the bathroom or go get washed up and things like that. That's a little bit more just more in the nurturing, like motherly or kind of caring sort of thing.
Nobody actually said hands-on.
I was actually just about to say that.
Oh, sorry, Franny, I cut you off. My bad.
No, that's okay. That yeah, we use our hands for everything, whether it's like dressing changes, like or something painful, or something little like changing diapers, or cleaning someone up, or helping them get out of bed for the first time after surgery. But that like touching is a big aspect of what we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I put in addition to all of these things like compassion and advocacy, like critical thinking, like we're big critical thinkers, and we have to be really resourceful because you're often like working to find a solution that works for the family under either less than ideal circumstances or dealing with side effects of this meds. We're working around this way. So I feel like we're always trying to think of workarounds for things. So we are resourceful, critical thinkers.
Yeah, thanks, Carissa.
That sounds like problem solvers. Am I still resourceful? Sorry, I can't see this. Would you say problem solvers? Is that,
Yes.
sorry, you said you nodded and I'm trying to type badly, so.
We'd love to hear next how you think that nursing as a profession is sometimes misunderstood. Curious who's willing to go first, or I can call on somebody.
Go first.
Okay. Go
I
for it.
feel like people always think we can fix everything, regardless of the department. I don't know if others feel that. I feel like every other department comes to us and is like, oh, can you do this? Or can you do this? Or can you do this? Or like in the hospital, oh, this department's short. You get to fill in this role. But then nobody can come and do that for us in that space. So
Yeah, thanks, Micah.
Yeah, I think sometimes we can be like the safety net, the catch-all for all the miscellaneous needs.
Chelsea, how would you frame that as maybe a little bit differently as how we're misunderstood as nurses?
Perhaps the priorities of our role,
Mm,
and really our role is supposed to be patient care.
yeah.
And sometimes we can get tasked with administrative items, housekeeping items.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that other professions sometimes, let me see if I get this right. I think sometimes other professions think that nurses are there to support them or to make things happen for them without recognition of what the priorities are in our work. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I think there's less understood of what our barriers are and our boundaries are to protect our role as patient care providers.
Yeah.
Mine kind of goes with that. I said, I don't work for a doctor, I work with a doctor. And I think there's sometimes this misunderstanding that the physician or the provider is my boss. And that I don't have a scope of practice. I don't have things that I am assessing and doing in my own like sphere. Is that I do what the doctor says. I don't question things. I'm their like assistant. They are my boss.
Is it fair to say the patient is your boss?
Yeah, the patient. Or I mean, I think also in nursing, I mean, I have my own, there's our own hierarchy of
Yeah.
people that we look to, that we look, that are our managers and people. And I think people often think that the doctor is the boss, or the physician, the provider, whoever it is the boss.
I wrote something very similar to that. Like the phrase, like, you're just a nurse. I feel like is when that has been said to me before, and like, can you get the doctor? Not really realizing that a lot of the orders I get are because of the things I then advocate and ask for. And so a lot of these decisions do come from like the things we see at the bedside, rather than the doctor like leading that ship in a sense.
Franny, I saw you come off mute.
I something similar to both of them, but I said that we just blindly follow orders without having our own knowledge to have our input, what the correct plan of action is.
I think I'm hearing from several of you that there's perhaps a perspective that nurses don't have their own autonomy or their own separate role, that it's only as it relates to other roles.
I feel like it's like autonomy and also the knowledge.
Yeah. Carissa, do you have anything that you want to add?
I was kind of just reflecting on how a lot of these carry over to the NP role, or a lot of the assumptions. I have noticed, even talking to friends that know I'm in NP school, and they think that I'm in school to like be in charge of all the other nurses. And I'm like, it's not. Like, I'm still reporting to the doctor as my boss. And it's just, so I don't have anything to add really. I agree with all of the like assumptions about nursing, but it's unfortunate that a lot of these exist for NPs as well, I think.
Yeah.
You know, when I'm listening to you all talk here, and maybe this is just something to call out and something I've heard from nurses before, in the how you define your profession, I think it just came up here. It's like you all assess folks constantly. You are the ultimate data collectors. You know, and I feel like that's a piece, like, people don't know that when you're by the bedside, you're working. It doesn't look like you're working when you're working, because you just do it. So how would you characterize that, either as a strength or definition of your profession, or how others misread you? Am I off base here, or is that true? Mike, is that part of your art and science?
That does kind of define it too, because we do it so well that people don't realize what we're doing. And I think that would fit actually under there really well.
Yeah, thanks for teasing that out, Helene. Appreciate that.
So when you are at the bedside working, but it doesn't look like you're working, how does that get misread?
I think in peds, sometimes they think we're just playing with kids.
Totally. And it's like, while you're talking to them, you might be like assessing for neuro status while you're joking around with them, or you're like playing, but you're actually looking to see if this rash has spread, or you're watching them walk and you're seeing if their gait is different. It's like, there's so many things that are like, it's so layered, all the things that are happening at once. And it might look like play, but I feel like our brains are always like, what's going on?
That's such a great example, because I'm sure I would see exactly the same thing. I wouldn't know that that's what you were doing. So yeah, that's a great reflection. Any other ways? Has anybody been asked to like get coffee, or like, are you doing things that are like, what are the kind of tasks that you get asked to do that are way outside your scope of practice?
I actually wrote this down too on my barriers and challenges. I wrote the word servant, because I've been called the snack lady, or like I'm the person who will go and provide all the random things that you want me to do in the midst of all my other tasks that are time sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of like, and I don't know if this is like way outside our scope, but like, I feel like I make so many phone calls to answer questions that other people have, or like, you know what I mean? Like the physician is wondering, why isn't this CT happen? And instead of just calling CT, I call CT and then I tell the physician what they said, or which is fun. Like that's not a huge issue for me, but it's kind of like you could just call, you know, we make a lot of phone calls.
Yeah.
Care coordination of all the different teams.
Oh, sorry, go for it, Kylie.
Go for it, you're good.
Okay. When I worked in the clinic, we would get a lot of like in-basket messages, but the physician, instead of replying to the patient, would reply to me to then retype it out to send to the patient, which I think goes along with the phone calls where it would save a lot of steps and then take me from giving information that maybe is not within my scope, but that I'm like just relaying the same information. That would have saved a lot of time if the physician just did it themselves.
I also work in outpatient oncology, and I'm primarily an infusion nurse. And I do think with a lot of my patients, there is this misunderstanding that if I am not in their bay, I am doing nothing. Like I have nothing else to do. And when patients ask, like, oh, do you have another patient here? And I'll be like, I have 3 or 4 of you here at one time. They're like completely shocked. And I've like even had family members be like, so you're not just here for us. And I was like, no, I'm here for a lot of different things. So if they see me sitting at my desk at the computer, I've gotten snapped at, I've gotten, yelled at, I've gotten, asked a lot of different things because I'm sitting. And just because I'm sitting and charting doesn't mean that I'm not doing things.
I was travel nursing recently as a critical care travel nurse, and I had to be really upfront about my scope of what type of medications I could push. I would have a fair number of physicians that would ask me to push things during a rapid sequence intubation that I cannot push as a nurse. And it was pretty shocking that providers would expect me to push things like propofol, and especially as a travel nurse. And so kind of, again, into that catch-all basket, like, if I, as the provider, can't do it in this moment, the nurse can do it. Well, no, I can't. So it just always feels like responsibilities fall upon us that aren't in our scope.
Can I ask a clarifying question, Chelsea? If you were not a travel nurse, if you had been a staff nurse, would those rules have been the same?
So yes, the rules are always the same for sure. Since this is a safe space, at my home unit, have I pushed medications outside my scope? Probably.
Yeah.
In an RSI, with providers that I trust and in situations that I felt warranted it for the safety of the patient. But as a traveler, I became much more rule abiding.
Sure. But I think that's an interesting point because you're reflecting where trust and teamwork actually makes all the difference, right? Because, it's a different thing if it's all on you versus if this is, an extension of the team functioning as a cohesive team. Great. Yeah. That's really helpful. Anything else? All right, here's my favorite part. Kristen.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's move on to talking about our profession's best kept secret. What do you think our superpowers are? What are our best kept secrets?
I think one of the best ones is that we see everything, like whether it's patient interactions, like patient parent or 2 parent interactions, or providers in the hallway before they go in, or little secrets, but we see everything.
I love that, Brittany. So true.
I said that we're kind of like the Swiss pocket knife of healthcare. And that kind of goes along with like, we tend to do a lot of jobs maybe that aren't necessarily ours, but even within our scope of practice, we can kind of do a little bit of everything, and we're going to be there to help you to get out of a jam.
Love that. What do you need? Bing, bing, here it is. Got it.
This is kind of less of a secret and more of a superpower for peds nurses specifically, but I feel like we pretty seamlessly adapt our communication styles depending on the age group that we're seeing. Like it's kind of amazing. Like we have 3 patients usually at Children's, and so like the way that you talk to the teenage boy in one room compared to the 3-year-old in the other room is like, I feel like I've become different. I'm like switching personalities between rooms a lot. And so it's a lot of like communication adaptation that happens you don't even realize you're doing it.
Mhm.
So the technical term for that is you are fast code switchers. That's exactly what you are. If you didn't know that, where you are like you're like one of those translators at the UN, where everybody has a different headset on, and you're the person that knows exactly what language to speak when that person flips the on switch.
Yeah. And I guess even beyond like developmental ages, you could have vastly different things happening in different rooms. Like you could be providing end of life care in a really solemn way in one room and then celebrating last chemo in a different room, and like being able to like bring that energy up and down like as you're switching between rooms like pretty rapidly, I think is a superpower for sure.
Absolutely.
I definitely echo all of these things. I want to bring a different perspective, and these are all superpowers, I think, not secrets, because I think we're all expected by our system. So it's like these superpowers are secrets, because I think the system demands that we
Hey, Chelsea, you're breaking up pretty
in
bad.
this way.
I wonder if you can try turning off your video for a second and then let's see if your audio is better, because we want to hear what you have to say.
Or maybe drop it in the chat.
Yeah, or you can put it in chat.
Are we better now?
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, I'm so sorry, you guys.
It's okay. No, we can hear you okay now.
Okay. No, I was just saying that I think all of our secrets are superpowers, but they're not secrets to the industry, because it's almost like the industry demands all things of us that they're no longer our secrets. Like we are expected to be with a, you know, end of life patient in one room did to, stat labs. Like I think our secrets have been exposed.
Yeah. Others?
And maybe part of that is because it's true. I mean, to your point, if people keep asking and someone keeps doing, because it's almost like you're the Uber team player or something. There's a piece here that if it's not a secret that you can ask a nurse to do anything and it will probably happen, then there's a self-fulfilling prophecy in there, right? So and I think that's a strength and potentially, a counterpoint to all these other expectations about how do you prioritize what's most important, or how do you get others to understand what your priorities are. That's what I'm hearing you guys say. Is that a fair assessment? What other superpowers? Anything on your lists that isn't here?
I was thinking we have, especially as we get comfortable in our disciplines, we kind of almost have intuition about what's going to happen with our patients before they even realize it. So like obviously you learn you're in a certain area or in a certain condition, you might be like, oh, I kind of know at this point, like this is going to happen.
Is this
Like
your
for
spidey
myself,
sense?
yeah, like your second spidey sense. Like I'm like, for myself in radiation, it's like, okay, cool. I know at this point your skin's probably going to start looking really crispy. So I'm going to give you this to do it. Or I'll give it to you the week before so you can start doing it in anticipation of that getting worse. So
Mm. Yeah, you guys haven't really talked a lot about education. But it's sort of, again, part of this is to make all this stuff explicit. And I bet I would be willing to bet that the fact you don't name it is because it's just so much a part of who you are
The
that it
name.
doesn't stand out as something different than communicating or being present or witnessing. But I've really understood that y'all are the ones that are sense making, interpreting, bridging communication. You know, you're kind of in the middle of it to your point, to your point, Carissa, when you know you're adapting to people, but I'm imagining you're also anticipating, Micah, what their information needs are. And because you're doing all this assessment all the time, you're kind of knowing, oh, I would imagine this is what comes next. So I'm going to be ready for that when they need it. So where do we put education? Does it go in the definition? Is it one of your best kept secrets? Where does that belong?
I think definition is, to Chelsea's point, it's not a secret that that's part of our job or very expected of us. So
Is that being part of a critical thinker? Is it part of your constant presence or you're spending time? Where do you put your education
I don't
bridge?
think it goes in one category. I think it's laced
It's a
in
thing on its
everything.
own.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's laced in our spending time.
Mm-hmm.
It bridges all those areas, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if we can have a couple more best kept secrets, and then for the sake of time, we should move on.
Yeah.
Or superpowers. Kylie, did you come up with anything new or different than what's been said about nursing superpowers or secrets?
Nothing really different. I think the Spidey sense one is really on track because I've had situations where I just look at a patient and I'm like, something's not quite right, and I can't quite tell you what's right, but something's not right. And I think like a perfect example was I had a patient when I was inpatient that I predicted like a massive cardiac event on him because I'd been their nurse for 3 days and something just wasn't quite right. And I kept telling the team that I thought something wasn't right. And the nurse practitioner finally like came and assessed the patient. And probably about 3 hours later, we had a massive cardiac event. And the resident later was like, he's like, I don't understand how you did that. And the other residents, like, you don't ask a nurse why they know, they just know. That's because your nurse told you there was a problem. You believe your nurse, there's a problem.
Yeah, that's a great example, Kylie.
Well, in the interest of time, we're going to just give you guys kind of a sneak preview overview of sort of what the other disciplines have said here. And this is a mix of exactly this process that has happened in the past with groups of NPs and PAs, social workers, psych, spiritual care. Those folks end up kind of talking together, and then physicians. So, you know, one of the things that I think is a clear role for all the professions is their advocacy role. I think when you ask any healthcare provider of any kind, they're always going to identify themselves as advocates. And I think what's really interesting is to reflect on sort of how the location and their training and sort of their inherent power. We're going to talk about power in a second, but you know, you come with responsibilities that are tuned to the profession. And so while we can all agree that everyone is an advocate, how they advocate and what they advocate for is different. So, you know, the idea of people who are responsible, maybe this is you know, Kristen, how do you speak for your profession as nurse practitioners? Sort of what's your version of advocacy and what might you add to what was already here before?
Yeah, thanks, Celine. I agree with everything that's up there. I would also say we advocate to often, I think, in a way that's sometimes different than what we see in other provider colleagues because of that nursing background and that nursing role that's so ingrained in us. Just because it's not our job, sometimes we tend to take that extra step, whether it's to get treatments authorized, whether it's to bring families together around a patient, to really make sure that the patients have what they need in a way that goes beyond what we're expected to do. And I mean, and I think that also we value partnerships with other professions a lot and recognize the value that other professions can bring. And so we will often, connect with those other professions for the benefit of our patients to make sure that they have what they need. I know one way it shows up in my practice in particular is that I take care of a lot of people who have court-appointed guardians or state-appointed guardians, and so they don't have anybody else to speak for them. And so I'm really working tightly with their guardian, who's usually not got any healthcare knowledge, to figure out what's best for that person based on their previously stated wishes, to whatever degree we know. And so really making sure that we're centering that patient's voice, and not just moving through a plan of care, because I think it's the right thing.
So are you able to use your power as the nurse practitioner? Is that one of the ways in which do you think you have more clout to cut through the red tape, or are you just more, it's just that nursing perseverance, you're just going to get it done?
Depends on the, depends on the situation. Sometimes, yeah, I don't have a lot of power. I've had people ask, wow, they put you on hold? I was on the phone. I'm like, oh yeah, all the time. Regan. They aren't impressed. But I think it is really that perseverance and that problem solving ability that we talked about earlier as nurses, that like, I'm going to figure this out. If it kills me, I'm going to figure this out for the sake of my patients.
Sorry about this. We're not updating well. What else in terms of how people misread? Just so people had mentioned earlier that the carry forward from the fixer of all eternity goes into NP role. How, in your mind, is the biggest misread for you between being a nurse and being a nurse practitioner?
I think it's highlighted pretty well here and what's already on the screen, but that is that we would continue to be an assistant, so that we're just there to help the physician, with a little bit like, and that we have to clear things with somebody else in order to prescribe or to treat. I've had people ask when I'm going to go back to school to become a real doctor. That one really smarts. But so really having to advocate for myself and for our profession that no, I have a full scope of practice and I am well trained to provide, diagnosis, treatment, and support you in all aspects of your care that you need in this situation, or your children's care, or your parents' care, however that happens to look in that particular patient encounter.
Yeah.
And I don't need to, I respect what my other colleagues bring to the table and certainly will connect with them when I feel that it's going to benefit your care, but I am an independent provider. So
Great. What about on the best kept secret? So, and if any of you are already feeling these secrets in your roles as NP students, chime in.
yeah, I would love to hear if anything comes up for all of you. I think that it really is what's highlighted here kind of as the first bullet, that we have a full scope of practice, especially in this state. And we have so many options. I think one of the best kept secrets, and I tell students this all the time, is that as nurse practitioners, we have so much latitude to move between even specialty areas without having to go back and retrain, right? So we can be in primary care, and then if we want to move in and out of other specialty areas, as nurse practitioners, we can do that. We're not locked into forever being in a particular specialty area or a particular scope even. So, and I love that about being an NP. So it's a great
In
welcome.
in the interest of time, I think what we want to just sort of have you take away from the spiritual care, social worker, psych folks, maybe you can think of your favorite social worker or spiritual care, your chaplain. I think the piece in particular is the very, very deep training. The thing that chaplains always tell me is they have as many years education as a physician. They have over 8 years of training. To be a healthcare chaplain is not only to be a minister, but it is also to be deeply, deeply trained in interpersonal, spiritual assessments, learning how to sit deeply. And much like you, they get taken as doing nothing when what they're doing is literally nothing, but being 100% present and really connecting with someone and letting holding space for existential crises. Also, someone to whom you can tell literally anything, and they will be able to to handle it. They can hold it and process it with you. Social workers, I think, feel very similar. They get handed the task list for all things. There's an expectation that they have magic wands because they are fixers in the broken system. But, they want to remind us all the time that the system is broken. And so there are limits to what they can do. Also, to your point earlier about you're not the only one that I'm working for right now. Social workers are notoriously have bigger caseloads, and particularly in hospital settings now, where the acuity and the complexity just continues to escalate. Social workers are really feeling it with respect to being asked to solve insolvable problems. So you guys probably know that at Harborview, for example, we just can't discharge people because there's nobody in the community that can take some of the folks. And so, there's some problems that can't be solved, in addition to that kind of problem solving, they are absolutely expert at reading teams and providing structures and strategies for taking care of the individuals in the team and the team as a team. So they are our team experts, as are you, and in a different way, right? So thinking, attending to different kinds of assessments that overlap with yours, but aren't the same. And I think there are times where this role confusion is like you're both seeing the same thing. And the question is, who takes it and who does what with it when we see it? They also want to make sure that that they are deeply trained in trauma-informed care, and that they are sensitive to the sort of, I think one of the social workers said, you go in the room and there's always extra people there, even if nobody's in the room. So that idea of all of their home life, of their social life, of the ups and downs in their life is present. And in some ways, the social workers are the ones that are keeping track of all of those things and the things that aren't said, to make sure that everyone gets included and they know who it is they're going to need to track down. So much like you, they are also spending a lot of time. And Kristen, if you had a social worker all the time for all your conservator care things, you would have, you could share that work. So it's also, where are they and how are they being put to work? So they're a scarce resource.
Yeah.
Do you want to have a quick run on the physicians? Kind of summarize what some of them were talking about?
Yeah, maybe you can share some of that, Helene, because you've heard it a lot more firsthand. I don't want to construe it at all.
So I want to say that the physicians who self-select to come and do a palliative care certificate program have already kind of put themselves in a different category. And so I find it really interesting when the palliative care docs are the ones that are talking about how they are also invisible. Yeah. And how a lot of them struggle because they've gotten into this extra training and it is also not valued. So, a lot of them are trying to find how to use their power in a good way to basically, I think one of the physicians said, in kind of the same way that we've heard from all of you, they're supposed to be the creative problem solvers because everybody else has given up. Or that they don't understand how much this relational investment is a part of medicine. It's kind of like that stuff all got stamped out of you during residency. And the humanity is the part that is really drawing folks back to this population, because they are really in the business of healing and not just curing. And so for them, the idea of how they use their medicine to do palliative care, where it allows them to actually embrace the whole person, where it feels like a lot of other ways of doing medicine, well, that's not at all, not to say that people in oncology and primary care and everybody doesn't have these relationships with people, but it's like, because you are so focused on the goals of care and the values of the person, it makes that relationship feel different to some degree. The other part, yeah, that I think their best kept secret was they are also sometimes at the bottom of the power pole, and that they are not as able to wield power with some of their other physician colleagues. They often get sent in to be the one to kind of go deal with the neurologist, you go deal with the fill in the blank other physician who is making this challenging. And we here are really not trying to stereotype anybody when we're talking about some of these roles and conflicts, but a lot of what we are going to be talking about in the next over this workshop is the ways in which we misread people all the time leads to conflict. So to transition from here, what we want to do next is invite you guys to take a stretch break. It is now 10:15, so we're about 30 minutes behind, but we had an extra hour, so we're going to be fine. Why don't we take a 15-minute break at this point and reconvene at 10:30? And then when we come back, we're going to shift gears and start leaning more into expressions of advocacy, power, leadership, and assumptions. So take a 15-minute break. Go ahead, go off camera and mic. We can pause the recording. Find it.
We'll see you all had a really nice break. Thanks, Celine. So we're going to, like we said, we're going to sprinkle some skill reminders through here. All right. So we're going to play Name That Skill again. So if somebody says, you're an incredible advocate for your loved one, what can you name that skill? What type of skill is that?
Go ahead and drop in the chat or just come
Yeah.
off.
Respect statements. Absolutely. So these are statements that can be especially useful when we're talking about times of conflict.
And what we want to emphasize here is that you're all used to giving respect statements to patients and family. How often do you give a respect statement to a colleague? And that if people come in hot, no matter who they are, a respect statement is really about that. I recognize your expertise here and you're showing up to be that advocate. So keep that in mind about how to use respect statements with colleagues as well as families.
Yeah, thanks, Celine. What about, would it be okay if I share what I learned in my conversation with your team? What kind of statement is this? And now we're, as Celine just pointed out, we're transitioning to using these skills with some team members. Yeah, so Chris is saying it's an ask permission. Absolutely. So we can use this skill a lot, especially when we're in group conversations with our team members, to be able to break in and maybe add a perspective or allow other people to share their thoughts in the same space. So Helene's going to take us into advocacy and power next. And Helene, what were you starting to say? I'm sorry.
I was going to say, and what is another way, if you're going to ask permission, sometimes what might that also be paired with as a skill that you need to practice? So this is a mind reading game, I know. But if you're going to ask permission, and I'm just talking and talking and talking and talking, and I'm going to just keep talking and talking and talking and talking, what else might you do if you want to ask permission?
A polite interruption.
There you are.
Yes.
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 So this polite interruption and an asking permission, I almost sometimes think of it as a polite interruption by asking permission. So it's like, if you're asking permission, is the point of your interruption? You can for those things. So excuse me, can I add? I just wonder if I might pause us for a minute and add something. So these are the two skills that we're going to practice a ton this weekend. And it leads us into the session that we're going to talk about next about advocacy and power relations. We've been looking around at trying to figure out who's on top of really thinking about these interprofessional power plays, and came across this quote that power is the ability to organize people and resources toward a desired outcome. And that to me is like a synonym for advocacy. So I'm going to be, for the rest of today, sort of pairing those two ideas, in part because I think if we can rethink how we think about power relations as in service to a desired outcome, and that we may be unaware of the ways in which we have power, or in which the ways in which we wield the power that we have can both be constructive but also counterproductive sometimes. So that's really kind of where we're trying to go with this workshop. And the idea is that everyone has power. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with Michel Foucault, who is a French philosopher. He was really one of the people who really started to name this notion of power, and is really kind of comes to a complement of things that come together in each and every one of us. So the first is sort of, what is our intrinsic personality style? Are we conflict avoidant? Are we not conflict avoidant? Like, we are fine to like step up and be the one to make the noise if that's what it takes. Others would much rather sort of pass that to somebody else and work in the background behind the scenes. But both of those are forms of power, right? If you're out in front or behind the scenes, those are very powerful forms. It also, the little plus sign is kind of like, where do you fit in the organization, and what power is assigned to you that you may or may not even know you have sometimes. And then where are the bounds, and how often does one push those? And how acceptable is it to push the bounds? Sometimes, as you were saying before, if they hand you the task of everything, they're maybe expecting that you're going to be pushing some boundaries to get that stuff done. And sometimes that's great, and sometimes it's not. Also related to sort of this hierarchy. But then time is another aspect of power. Sometimes there are people who just have to act fast, and they will use their power in the name of efficiency. And sometimes there are people that actually, it's the like the diplomats doing the behind the scenes work. It's really long, laborious, tedious, iterative, and then you get breakthroughs. So sometimes the way that you can actually assert your power is also prescribed by the amount of time that both you have, but also other people have. And also just, like, you're not going to sit around and talk about who's going to go first in a code, right? You figure that ahead of time. You go to the routine. People have the power and the roles that they need, because what's the most important thing is that you execute this quickly and well, right? So with these sort of 4 dimensions in mind, we then bring each of these into these hierarchies that are medicine and healthcare. And, kind of what we want to say is that when you look at the org chart, this is kind of how it falls. And each of these, pyramids, or whatever these shapes are here, are also kind of their own world in which there's a pecking order. So even within each of these hierarchical frames, there are more hierarchies. And so part of this is really understanding what is the role power that one has, and along with that, what are the responsibilities? Because with power come responsibilities. So some people want it, and they accept those responsibilities. Some people accept the responsibilities but don't really want the power. And it's an important thing to note there. But then, there's at the bottom, we also have patients, families, guardians, patient advocates. But you all know that they also have an enormous amount of power. And sometimes they are completely disempowered by the healthcare system. Somebody says that the fastest way to get rid of your agency is to cross the threshold of a hospital, where you are immediately made puny, both by the illness and also the systems of care that aren't really built for you, even though you are the reason why folks are there. So I want to just have you take for just a minute, and I want you to think about a very specific patient or family And I want you to just take a minute and locate this advocacy moment with that experience, and then just write your example in the chart and just tell me kind of what you did and why that was advocacy. And just hold posting. Give you all a minute to write. It looks like folks have finished typing. So go ahead and hit enter. Let's see what you got. Love these examples. Thanks, guys. So these are great examples. I think there's a couple in which your advocacy is directed directly toward the patient you're caring for, in terms of like switching up the patient care just to make it more aligned with where the patient's at. That goes a long way to what you guys were saying earlier. But I'm seeing a couple others where you're kind of what we might call powering up, meaning you are there's a system. You know, what we say about healthcare is you enter a hospital. I'm going to talk about hospitals, and it's sort of like you come in and you're really sick, and the goal is to get out better than you came in, right? That's the simplest way that I like to talk about hospitalization. And along the way, there's kind of this unfolding, and it just sort of goes. And sometimes you have to stop the train. Sometimes you have to slow it down or do it as a redirect. And that is a kind of an advocacy move that I call powering up, where you're sort of using that position to advocate for stopping the train. It's a little bit like in the aviation industry, when they do the checklist, anyone can stop the plane. If it's not safe, we don't fly. So it's kind of that orientation toward changing the level at the system or in the communication. And then there's also the level of the individual patient and sort of where you're directing that. And then I'm hearing that a lot of it is that, as you were saying, with your presence and your listening, you're also bringing new facts to the story that have been missing heretofore. So there's also a part about your work and your advocacy and power that's about illumination and kind of opening up the story so that it is possible for us to think about different ways of doing something to achieve the same end. Because again, that train is kind of protocolized. And sometimes your job in advocacy is to break the protocol just enough or modify that protocol so that it can still get the job done, because standard isn't going to work in this instance. And so sticking to protocol would be the passive power play, but pushing against that protocol to make it modified to the specific situation is an important part of advocacy. And I'm assuming you guys take this stuff 100% for granted. And so part of the reason why I'm calling it out is because these are really different forms in which you exercise your power and your advocacy. And it's important when we think about teams, because everybody on the team may be doing some version of this. And so part of it is learning how to not only have your own spidey sense, to your point, Kylie, but how would that resident share some of that spidey sense of yours? How might you be able to kind of share how you see and what you are calling when you're calling these timeouts, so that they can see it too. And so it's not a like, hey, what? But it's like, oh, I get it. So these are some of the things we're going to talk about next. So in the organizational development literature, people in the business world and in anyone that's sort of sociology who is studying power relations, this hopefully has some intuitive sense for you that there are those with power who are either given it or take it or just practice it. And those are the power positions. So I sometimes think of these as the C-suite or whoever the decision maker is on a team. The one who's going to, the quarterback or the coach, you know, there's lots of places to think about this. And then structurally, there are people who are in a one down position. And when I say that, this could be a relationship between someone who is a power position and the one down. It could be a structural relationship. So just think of these more kind of as a type of relationship. And so, you know, when people issue in a hierarchical system, they issue, you know, requests or demands or just expectations that something happen. The person in the one down position has a variety of options in terms of how they respond to that request. So I hope just nod your head if this sort of has intuitive feel to you, from like, you know, acknowledging support, like, sure, fine, that's great. Defer, submit, acquiesce, subvert, undermine, oppose, or rebel. So here's some examples that Amy and I came up with. So if we were in a team meeting and somebody poses, okay, we're going to do this thing next, you know, I'm running the meeting and I have like a summary of the plan, and I can say in the one down position, that's a great plan. I'll complete my assignments, send an update by the end of the day. So I am in alignment here. I not only acknowledge this, but I'm full on board with my support for it. A defer statement might be, sounds good, I'll follow your lead. Like I don't need to have a fight here. I'm just like, that sounds fine. You do it. You know, that's great. I'll go along. I don't have to care that much. A submit or an acquiesce could be something like, okay, that's fine. You know, I've got other priorities to focus on, but it could also be, okay, that's fine. I have other priorities. Fine. I'll go to work. Right. So how we submit and acquiesce is also attitudinal. So we can say these exact same words and we can bring it or not. We can begin when we're submitting and acquiescing. We can do that as if we don't care, but we also might care. And this is where some people might describe passive aggressive behaviors start, is right here. And that is when you can't get what you want. This is what passive aggressive behavior is. When you can't get what you want through your own agency, you start to shift the way and you become more of a blocker. So if you think about actions with barriers and facilitators, the acknowledge, support, defer, positive submission, and acquiescence would all be facilitators. But the negative of that, with attitude, is starting to become a barrier. And around barriers, we also start to have conflict. So part of the reason why we're kind of calling this out and naming these very specifically is because we want you to be able to recognize sort of what is happening and then where do we go from there. What often happens when we start sort of crossing this midline is it can start to become a lot more negative and become more of a barrier. So this is the one that you probably, sorry, I got way ahead of myself. This is something that you might hear in a break room. Can you believe what she did? We told her what the conference against we're going to do, and she overruled us again, right? There's some frustration going on there. There's this like, you know, we've been trying to work on this relationship and it seems to not be working. And then, you know, where you go from this to sort of full on opposition might be something like, I'm just not going to do this anymore. I'm going to get paged out of the next meeting, right? So if you can actually oppose and rebel by refusing to participate. What I should have added was another example here that could be like, I'd like to ask for a pause in this meeting, and I'd like to go back to the meeting that we had last time when we discussed this. So sort of going back to the subvert and undermine, we can be more direct or polite interruptions here to sort of think about this, not only in terms of opposition and rebel, as in I'm just going to stop budging, you know, that little kid who just sits down, or your dog You're trying to get them to walk and they're like, not going. I'm just sitting down here and I'm not budging. We're moving from that to a redirect where we're like, all right, honey, let's go. Let's see what else might we find at the end of the walk that would get you interested in walking again. So you can use this power in an obstructive way. And you can also use this power to oppose and rebel in a constructive way. And that's what we're really kind of trying to work on here. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with these terms. Has anybody heard the term power over before? It's really this notion that I am going to get what I want by making you conform, and not really, it's kind of the directive from on high. And if there's any opposition to it, it's like, those are the rules. That's what we do. No questions. Do your thing. And in healthcare, when we recognize that there isn't a single way forward, many times, this powering over can sometimes work, as I said, when the expectations are all aligned and we're sort of at that end where it's not really a power over because the person is appropriately asserting their power to do the right thing and we're all in agreement. But I'm just curious, hands up, has anybody ever felt like they have been powered over in a work situation where somebody asserted a power over you and undermined your capacity to respond the way you would like? So it's super common. And I know for myself, you've met me, I'm a strong personality. I've powered over people so many times. I get excited about stuff. I forget that there are people that are just like, don't stop. And so it's also a reminder when we do that, because we always do. There are times when we just think we're right and we're going to push it forward. The alternative to powering over is powering with. And it is about sort of trying to figure out how we can each best use the powers that we have to find that alignment and be in sync. And sometimes it means for those who have institutional power, it's very much like our meeting agreements. Sometimes that means that I'm going to pull myself back and I'm going to withhold being the first one out of the gate because everyone looks to me as the fill in the blank role as the one who's going to do that. And so I can explicitly pull that back or quiet back or take a back seat. I like to call it leading from second chair. Like you don't have to be out in front. And then you're working with everyone else to sort of figure out who's going to then be in the first chair and what is going to happen from that leading from second chair place. And these are typically through pre-meetings. So we're going to spend a lot of time on Friday doing a pre-meet and kind of going through this getting together so that we kind of can anticipate what's about to come next. And we can disrupt the power over default that is structured by the hierarchies that we live with. So just a quick chat. One example, maybe recent, maybe long ago. Sometimes these stick with you for a while. And it can be either one that you've witnessed or been the recipient of, or even one you've done yourself. Just take a minute and drop an idea in the chat here.
Does this need to be clinical or just in general?
Any feeling. It's really about the feeling, right? So the experience, because, you know, these things, you feel them in your body. They last a while. So it could truly be anything. And don't name names, just roles if that's important. Who were the players? What was at stake? And what was the power move? Mostly is what we're interested in. feel free to drop them in as you're ready. Great example, Chelsea. Yeah, we power over our partners all the time. And we get powered over by partners probably too. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a big one. So what we're seeing in these two examples is what we talk about is like stealing voice or disempowering someone to actually have a say. And so it's absolutely a move that undermines autonomy and personhood for the person on the receiving end. You are, this is actually in bioethics terms, we call this an epistemic injustice, in the sense of you are being silenced, literally. And all that you stand for is not being taken seriously in any way. And so being powered over repeatedly again and again and again, not surprisingly leads to burnout, leads to moral distress, leads to anomie and feeling like, why am I going to work every day? I have all this expertise, no one's valuing it. It is literally a move to render you, to actually diffuse the power that you have. And so that is a real consistent challenge in healthcare. And so, what we're talking about when we're talking about powering with is trying to figure out who our allies are, and not in a devious, rebellious kind of a way, but in a strategic, grown-up, fully adult, let's do this with consciousness kind of a way. I don't know about you, but I have been in the room with 60-year-old, 2-year-olds many times. You basically, it's like what's going on in front of you is a sort of like the person's inner child is playing out, and all those insecurities never seem to have been addressed. And sometimes these power moves are somebody else's fears, or somebody else's version of advocacy, because they think that what's at stake is so important that it overrides anybody's advocacy or their autonomy, and maybe even themselves sometimes. Sometimes it's just plain autocratic dictator, but sometimes it's got a different motivation that's going on. So thinking about a power over situation, one of the things that is important with a power with switch is to think about some strategies to use. And I think of this sort of as a triumvirate. The first is that you recognize that you have power. So Chelsea, you powered over, so you had power. And powering with is also recognizing when you're misusing the power. So it's both of when should I step up and do something, when should I stop and invite somebody else to step in or move in. And so sometimes that is permission that I have to give myself. It's like, oh, check, wait. I need to pause and invite somebody else to then actually follow up and enact that. So, you know, if this is a little bit like when we're doing our Vital Talk redos, and this is the place where we're going to be asking us all to be much more mindful about what power we have and when is it time to either recognize my own power or recognize somebody else. So I could say something like, Chelsea, that sounds like you learned something there. You know, I'm going to let you talk about that in a different way. So I might recognize sort of the learning or the skill or the talent. Kylie, to your point, you know, the powering with would be, oh, you're absolutely right. I failed to recognize that conflict here, and safety is an issue on both floors. You know, so I would then re-empower you to get your voice back, basically. If I took it away, then the other thing that a power move is to give it back. And so that's what I mean by the permission and enactment is that resharing of the power and the sort of redistribution of it. And the way we're going to be doing that, and you're going to be doing this a ton, is with our team framework. So, you know, we are the kings and queens, because it's Amy, of acronyms and frameworks. And so this time we're really trying to get to the place where you trust your team because you know your team. It's not a blind trust. It is because you are actively aware. Emotional awareness, we're really good at that now. And it's just also an emotional awareness of the team members. It is that way in which you can either ask for recognition or permission. You can interrupt politely to ask questions and add a perspective. And that is a power move because you're interrupting the flow. And anytime you stop the flow, it can be productive or not. But when used in this kind of a way to kind of open it up and redirect the voice so that more people can speak is a form of power that we're advocating for. And then the idea of making a plan together. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on this now, but just a preview of what's coming. But now I do want you to just take a minute. Now we're going to give you about 5 minutes here to think about a time when you actually powered over. And, or in this instance, if you don't have one of those, when you were powered over, but we want you to kind of get behind the way it was performed and think about what those intentions might have been, either yours or someone else's, because that's where the action can happen. And then once you've thought about your intentions, think about what you might have tried differently. So if you were going to do a redo, and then if you get that far, you can think about what might get in the way. So I'm going to just give you until 11:05 here to do some writing. Thank you. So are you good to power through and do some improv? That's what we're doing next. Okay. And I'm looking for Jess, who is not here. Okay. Well, we'll just do improv, and that means we're going to just do what we do. So, how many of you have ever done improv? Has anybody ever done improv? Yes, no? So you do improv actually every day. I just want to say, in the sense that one of our actors, Harold, He's the older gentleman who always looks like he's, I don't know, maybe the Peds folks haven't even met him because he's often playing a geriatric patient. But I watch him and he's amazing. And he goes, well, acting is just reacting. That, we take cues and we play on them. And it really is this idea that improv is taking what we are experiencing and adding to. And so much like I had you guys all stand up and get grounded in the moment, I want to say that everything that you have right now for this improv, you already have. You have tons of expertise. We're going to play around with reading emotions and making assumptions. So you don't need any extra training for that. You're really good at all of this. And we're going to start with the generosity of yes and. And Tina Fey is like, to me, yes and means don't be afraid to contribute. You have to show up when you take somebody's intro line and add your own flair to it. So the yes and is an understanding that you have a responsibility to contribute. It's not just that you are listening, it's that you are always acting and reacting. And that your initiations are really worthwhile. So the part here is that there's no wrong answers. Whatever we do is correct. So I want to just show that difference. It's like, anybody feed me some line of any kind. So Franny, just tell me how you're feeling right now, or an observation on the world.
It's really, really rainy out.
Yes. And it's still, the birds are singing and it's really lively in my side of town. And I could have done, yes, but I wish the sun was here today. Right. So it's also an orientation. When we say yes, but we're essentially saying no. So whenever you say yes, it's like, oh, I'm in agreement, but means bam, you put the brakes on and you're not in agreement. So the practice of yes and is to challenge yourself to find something good in what you've heard and add an embellishment that comes from a place of positive intention, a place where you're trying to complement and extend. Does that make sense? So part of this is listening to your inner voice and following your intuition. Matt Walsh says you are enough. You don't have to put on a show or develop tons more knowledge or fake anything. You have plenty of information in your brain. Just respond how you would respond as yourself. It's about coming to terms with, I know enough. And it's about relinquishing your idea about what this scene is about. You get to let that go and just listen to what your scene partner is saying. Free yourself from having to be perfect. Just support, yes, and listen. Trust your partner. So when we're doing this yes and, you don't have to be clever, and we're going to be feeling emotions. So today we're going to ask each of you to kind of feel into an emotion and then act that emotion out. But you don't have to be melodramatic here. You also don't have to be funny. Some people that improv comedy is like, SNL and we all have to be Tina Fey or Kate McKinnon. We don't. We're just asking you to be authentic. And when we ask you to lean in and feel an emotion or read an emotion, that you're just coming from that place of integrity and honesty. The other part about this is this concept of presence and partnership. And the idea is that we're going to be reading emotion in dyads. And so part of this is about, you are 100% responsible for your showing up, your presence, and you're also responsibility for 50% of the space. So what we mean by that is don't have your 100% take up your partner's 100%. So that would be a powering over. And so what we're trying to say is own the half that's yours and leave room for the other person's 100% to show up 50%. This took me a while to think this through, but that's probably because I'm an extrovert and I love to talk. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm wondering if I can have a volunteer, and I'm going to just demo this by asking you to read me. I'm going to not say anything except hi, your name, and then you're going to say, hi, Helene, you seem something, like whatever it is that you see. So this is improv. Do I have any brave souls who might be willing to try and read my attempt at portraying communication? Come on, you guys, everyone's going to play. Okay, Chelsea, thank you. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of feel into an emotion here. Okay. Hey, Chelsea.
Hi, Helene. You seem a bit tired.
Tired. Okay. Not quite what I was intending. So let me try that again.
I'm tired.
Yeah, that's also an assumption, right? Sometimes we think we're mirroring. So let's try this again. Okay. Hi, Chelsea.
Hi, Helene. You seem excited.
Okay. Not quite it either. Anybody else, Franny? What do you think I'm trying to communicate here?
Stressed.
Stressed. Close. Carissa?
I don't know. I've agreed with what everyone said thus far. It's difficult to say. Are we supposed to guess
You're supposed
what
to be
you're
just guessing
feeling, or
what
can we
I'm
just be like,
feeling.
how are you feeling?
No, it's just you seem, fill in the blank. So you're just trying to read my emotion. You're trying to do a naming statement here. I'll do it one more time. Hi, Chelsea.
Hi, Helene. You seem like you have a sense of urgency.
Right? Okay, I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated. Now, somebody who knows me, I'm not screaming when I'm frustrated. I seem tense. I seem tired. I seem wound up. So this is the point. Frustrated is a very specific emotion. And I have trained myself not to come across publicly looking frustrated. So it's not a super hard. If I came across like really mad and yelling, like this was I turn through my teeth and hi, Chelsea, then that might look like anger. But it isn't even that I'm mad. It's just that I'm frustrated. And so this is what the improv is going to be about. So Micah, I'm going to try another one. I'm just going to try with you if that's okay. Hi, Micah.
Hey, Helene, you seem a little down, actually.
Okay, let's try that again. Somebody else, Kylie, I'll try it with you. This new emotion. Hi, Kylie.
Hey, Helene, you seem excited.
Yeah, I was excited. Why was I excited? What did you read in my emotion there?
Your pitch got higher.
Pitch got higher. What other cues from my face did you get?
You were smiling.
I was smiling, right? Okay. Kirsten, I'm going to try you if that's okay.
Sure.
Hi, Kirsten.
Hi, Helene. You seem a little reserved today.
It's true. I'm reserved, but I'm also trying to feel into you. I'm trying to make some space for you. So that's a hard one to know how to show up as compassionate and present. Let me try one more. Who hasn't gone? Anybody? Carissa, did you go? You went. Franny, you went? I think everybody's gone. So this is part of what it is that we're trying to communicate here is if you're wrong, and have any of you done a naming statement and just blown it? Like you just didn't name it at all. Chelsea, what happened?
I was trying to de-escalate an angry patient by naming their anger as like frustration, and while they were frustrated, it was like not at all what he was trying to convey. He was just trying to convey like severe worry, and he felt like I was only hearing that he was angry and that I didn't care.
So did he give you a chance to do it again?
No, it did not go well.
Okay. So these are the ones where, trying to do this. And so sometimes you seem can be an invitation for someone to correct you, but sometimes if it's a really strong emotion and you misread them, then they feel like you're just doing it again. Everybody just misreads me, right? So this is trying to find those ways in to getting it to a place. Oh, sorry, I realized you guys could not see the instructions here. Duh. So the next one we're going to do, I'm going to send you actually out to a breakout room. And I'm going to be running a timer. And this is a really tricky one for two parts. One, each person is going to get 2 minutes. So one of you will be the venter, the person who's going to vent nonstop for 2 whole minutes. So whatever you got, bring it. Like whatever it is, you are just going to vent for 2 minutes nonstop. You guys got to keep your eye on the little clock, and I will send a 2-minute warning. And at 2 minutes, you stop. You just stop. And the only time the listener can say anything is your 2 minutes are up. That's the only thing you're allowed to say. So the listener is just listening. You cannot say a word. You're listening to the rant for 2 minutes. At the 2-minute mark, you switch. And then the listener gets to rant for 2 whole minutes. And the listener is just going to hold that space, and then I'm going to yank you back. I'll give you a 30-second warning. And then I'm going to pull you back. So if you go over a little bit, that's okay. And if you're done at your 4 minutes and you see it, just voluntarily come back, and then I won't yank you out. So are you clear what your job is? One of you will decide who goes first. At 2 minutes, you switch, and I'm going to open the breakout rooms and send you out right now. Whoopsie, except I got to find the breakout rooms. Hold on. Wrong button. All right. Off you go. $3:11 in 15 seconds. Okay. So you all just heard a story, probably of maybe frustration or anger, maybe joy, disappointment. I'm not sure what you heard the story. I don't need to know. But what I do want you to do is just take 1 minute, and then I'm going to just check in with each of the pairs. I want you to write just one word that summarizes the positive attribute of what you heard behind that rant for your partner. So an example is I just spent a lot of time with Amy, and she was really ranting about a situation at work that felt really unfair. And my commentary was, this is my partner, Amy, and she values equity. So Carissa and Franny. Franny, do you want to have a word about your partner, Carissa?
Do you want us to say like a 1-line summary
Just
of the
exactly
rant?
like this. This is my partner who values.
This is my partner, Carissa, who values confidence.
And Carissa, what can you say about Franny?
This is my partner, Franny, who values flexibility.
Micah and Kirsten.
So this is my partner, Micah, and I would say that they value equity as well and are very dedicated.
Just equity. Got it.
Okay.
And dedication, if you wanted to add a second one. Micah?
This is my partner, Kristen, and they value inclusion.
And Chelsea and Kylie.
This is my partner, Kylie, and she values education.
And this is my partner, Chelsea, who values their time.
So for the ranters, what was that when you were in the ranting role? What was that like to rant for 2 minutes?
It was fabulous.
What was fabulous about it?
I just, well, number one, Kylie being my partner, we've spoken a few times, so being able to rant in a safe space that I know also she understands what I'm saying, without any feedback, but just a human who I know understands and is safe, feels very nice.
Okay. So familiarity, context is important, right? You have a shared understanding of a situation, and there's some empathy there for what that's like. So that's a really helpful attribute. Chris and Franny, what did you get out of the rant side of that?
Honestly, kind of similar. I ranted about a work thing that like a big change that's going to be happening at Children's that I know Franny can relate to a lot, even though we work in separate units. So understanding was communicated even like non-verbally, I guess. It's like, yeah.
Franny, when you were on the rant side?
I would say similar thing, something that I know that Chris is also going through, but in a different way. But to be able to rant to someone that gets it, and then like feeling like someone understands, and then being able to like keep going, like it made me want to say more.
So for those of you who were listening, what was your superpower that you were asserting for 2 minutes?
I think nonverbal cues were big, to like nod my head and like at least in some way say like I hear you and like I want to hear more.
Silence. You were silent for 2 minutes. When does that ever happen? When someone is, did anybody yell at you? Did you feel like you were being yelled at? No. Okay. The second person who, Micah and Kirsten, what on the ranting side? Sorry, didn't want to leave you guys out. Go, Micah, you were unmuted. Go for it.
The ranting side, yeah, it was just like it felt like you could just release. We were talking about more on the kind of not work related things, but kind of life things, and it was like, oh, kind of, I feel like commiserating on the struggles of that process and that.
Kirsten?
Yeah, it was good to like get that out and just feel heard. I think it was also really difficult for me then not to like have more of a conversation and to have like to take up 2 minutes of truly just my feelings about something was a little difficult.
Yeah, some people say they just like they run out. We're so used to like censoring ourselves. Like the most anybody can really handle about my feelings is maybe 30 seconds, and then the tolerance for my feelings runs out. So for somebody to just let me keep going for 2 whole minutes and not say anything, it's like, did you feel like you got a second win and you kind of like were able to come back around and sort of fuel it? I'm curious, for those who went second, is the rant that you thought you were going to start with the same rant, or did you kind of pick up your partner's rant and run with it? Who went second? Okay, so Chelsea, Franny, and Micah, when you went second, was your rant pre-planned, or did you pick a rant based on what your partner did? I'm seeing a head shake no and a yes.
I had my original rant, and then I included some similar rants from my partner, but I did sort of have my own track. They just happened to kind of align.
Micah, you shook your head.
Yeah, I did not have a plan, so I kind of just listened to what Kirsten was talking about and was like, oh, I can rant about something somewhere along the same lines or somewhere farther along in that process that is different. But yeah.
Franny, you 1 second.
Yes, I changed my rant because I knew Carissa, so I knew that she would know what I was talking about.
So I think part of this is also I'm hearing an element of solidarity, right? And when we align our narrative with somebody else because we like got in their groove and we aligned with them, then we will sometimes also shift what we're doing in that way. So part of the whole point about this is what a team meeting is all about. It's reading the room. It's allowing somebody to feel the feels. Imagine this is essentially when your family members are yelling at you, Kylie, or Chelsea, they were mad and they were frustrated. Sometimes silence is truly the best way to go. So I don't know how many of you know about the 6 seconds in the amygdala. Amygdala is the part of your brain where you get the flash of emotion. If you've ever been around a little kid or somebody who just melts down, they're going to melt down for about 6 to 10 seconds. And then what happens is they have to remind themselves that they're melting down because actually the emotion has cleared in about 10 seconds. So to your point, Kristen, was it you? Kristen, you said you can't really talk about emotions for 2 whole minutes. It's in part because the brain, you have to keep feeding it to keep it going. So if somebody is talking and talking and talking, it's because they've just got a lot of stuff in there and people don't usually give them that much room to dump it all out. So you can actually achieve a lot of really good emotion work in 30 seconds or less because the brain is already working in that direction. But what mostly happens with silence is it's like the little kid is going to get that chance to refresh. And sometimes people will just peter themselves out. So sometimes you can just let them run. And if you give them the right cues of support, you'll acknowledge, and then you can actually help bring them to a close. How many of you were done before did you hear me when I said 2 minutes switch, by the way? I'm testing the new broadcast thing. Were you done? How many who went first? Were you finished when I called you out? Yeah. So it's a long time. So just thinking about, how long, and for those listening, did 2 minutes feel like a long time? Were you getting bored listening to the rant? No. So this is our own non-linear perceptions of time. And just remember that emotion time is not on the clock, right? This is that Kairos time, not the Chronos clock time. Emotion lives on the Kairos zone. Emotion has no time. Even though we say 6 seconds, those 6 seconds are not 6 clock seconds. If I count you out and you're feeling something, it doesn't make sense. So really, this is what we're going to try and have you think about as we do family meeting pre-meets, as we do conflict, as people perform fiercely their roles for advocacy that might sometimes run counter to your own sense of what the right action is. So we're going to be asking you to read the room intensely. And I think it's a useful way to sort of transition to the end here. We're just about done. And Keegan-Michael Key, you guys know him. Key and Peele, he's half of Key and Peele. Talks about improv actors at war together, where you build an intimacy telepathically communicating to each other so you become a tight group. I got your back. I got your back. I got your back. And this is really the feeling that I heard, especially for those of you that had organizational affinities. What I was hearing you talk about was, I got your back. Yeah, that thing at work is a thing at work. I got your back. We're sharing this struggle. I got your back. We're going through this together. I got your back. When we are working at highly functional teams, it's because of this ethos. We're not at war with each other. We're not trying to tear each other down. We're not trying to claim our own particular fame. What we're really trying to do is assure that everyone is moving forward together. And so for our takeaways on this one, it's the generosity of yes and. So yes, I hear you, and let me add my piece. It's recognizing that you are actually responsible for calling something out if it's not going. If you're reading the room and someone else is missing the cues, but you are not, you are seeing them, it's actually incumbent upon you to rise to that and to listen to your inner voice, follow your intuition. And the polite interruption is kind of a no harm, no foul. If it's not the right thing to do, everybody's going to know pretty quickly. But that empowering yourself, recognizing in yourself that an intervention right now feels really needed, and then asking for that permission and then enacting it. It's that triad there. And trust that sometimes it's going to feel like you're going out on a limb, but most often other people are really going to appreciate that you took that risk. Be responsible 100% for what you bring and make the space for others to bring it to. Share, listen, accept the gifts that are given to you. And remember, I got your back. So any questions, thoughts? So just to wrap us up, you're going to be using this a lot. This is a way to power with. It's a way for you to recognize and express your own strengths for advocacy and see how your others do that. We often, we train you, and you guys are super well trained to respond to empathy and emotion. That is not a skill that is shared by everyone. So that is a new superpower in your toolkit. Use it wisely. And when we do, then we're flattening the hierarchy. We're moving out of that power over to a power with move. And we're allowing everybody in the room to show up with the power that they have. And honestly, that's really what we're after with this, is so that everyone can be kind of working at their highest and best, and doing the thing that is uniquely their thing. So be you, and be you together is really the idea. So on our final wrap up, we always want you to tell us what you're taking away. And maybe one skill that you can drop in the chat that you are still kind of musing on, noodling on. One thing you're taking away, one thing you're still noodling on. So let's start with a takeaway. And you can drop that in the chat. And I'd really love to see something from all of you if you can post that. Love it. Yeah, these are great. And one thing you're still wondering about or noodling on, you want to work on. These are to help you set your own intentions for the workshop. Light interruptions, for sure. Love that, Franny. I think of that as own your power. If you don't recognize it in yourself, you're going to have a harder time having others recognize it in you. Right. And love that, Kirsten, of intentions. You know, I think the thing that happens is people get fierce. And fierce can come across as angry, when in fact what it is passion. And or it's routine. So if somebody comes in and they don't know what to do, they're going to do the thing they always do. because in some ways that's your crutch. Like if you haven't had time to think it through and really plan it, you're just going to go do the automatic thing that you always do. And if you just walk in with the assumption that that is the appropriate thing to do right now, you could be wrong. So sometimes intentions are just habit. And so sometimes this is also your power to interrupt a routine that isn't the appropriate application in this instance. Just because we always do it that way doesn't mean that we should do it that way right now. And part of your power is to read the room and call that out. So hope that is helpful for you guys. Appreciate your time. Want a reminder that we're all learning. We screw up all the time. Your faculty are going to be trying new things. We are switching up this workshop a little bit, so everybody's going to be on the learning edge right there with you. So as always, we invite grace to give yourself and grace to give others. And then just a reminder, we just did today, so yay, we're done. We're going to come back on Friday. You might want to just take a quick look at your manuals, and then Kylie, let's figure out where yours is. I can reach out to Jess and make sure. We're going to be doing a lot of role play. And this time what's going to be different is we're bringing in interprofessional team members. So since we are talking about teaming, this is going to be all about that. So not only are you going to have patients and families in the room, but you're going to have other clinicians in the room. And sometimes the scene is going to be negotiating with your colleagues, and sometimes the scene is going to be, doing the family meeting with the folks. So that's what we're planning. We're going to be revisiting IREMAP and this new team framework a lot to sort of think about how to integrate that. What we're going to do on Saturday is we're going to do, so on Friday, you're going to go back to your animal groups. So you'll go back to the same small group that you had in fall quarter. For the most part, there might have been a few adjustments, but you'll have different facilitators. And everybody always says, oh, I loved my people. And we're like, yes, and you'll love these ones too. So part of this is to mix it up so that you get to learn from different folks, and everybody has good things to bring. So we do this on purpose. And so then on Saturday, we're going to end up where everybody is in the giant room all together, and everybody's going to be watching the same family conference, and there'll be a lot of opportunity to sort of think and write. So when we invite you to come in and do the chat, please do. It really is the place where you process and we see you processing, and it's helpful for all of us to kind of know what's happening inside your heads, because we can't know otherwise. And then we're going to put it all together and sort of like, how do you actually write that up, and what does documentation look like? Because how you communicate all this good stuff for your colleagues in the note is a huge part of the work that we do in palliative care. So that's that. And then the last part is we're going to get a preview of kind of where we're going for third quarter, as well as kind of how to translate some of these advocacy skills also into more of those innate personality things, and capturing how, if you're an introvert or you're an extrovert, those are different kind of power skills as well. So that's where we're headed. Any questions? We're going to start at 8 on Friday. We're going to start with our usual coffee chat rooms just to get everybody kind of warmed up. So come if you can. And if you are having a morning and you just need some extra time and you are not in a space where that's going to work for you, showtime is around 8:20. So make sure you're here by then. And with that, I'm wondering if I can start and just have each of us read a couple of lines. So Kylie, Chelsea, Kirsten, you just have to know who you're following. Franny follows Kirsten, Carissa follows Franny, and Micah, you'll come at the end, and then I'll go in. And then if we still have lines left, we'll come back to you, Kylie.
Can you say
Okay.
that one more? Sorry, I don't know if our view is the same as yours in order.
Yeah. Kylie, Chelsea, Kirsten, Franny, Carissa, Micah, me. And I can cue you. Kylie, 2 lines, please.
Am I passionate or obsessive? That's a matter of perspective.
You can make a quick decision, but your opinion is subjective.
Am I eccentric or insane, demented or and deranged?
I won't argue with the claim that I'm particularly strange.
See, the way that we perceive, it shapes the way that we believe.
Let us not deceive ourselves. Things aren't always what they seem.
Sometimes I'm like a raging river, and sometimes a silent stream.
Is what we see reality or just a vibrant dream?
And with that, thank you all for spending your morning with us. And